All right, guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is a chess series for beginners, absolute beginners. In particular, my 12-year-old daughter just beat StockFish level 1. We are going to not discuss the moves themselves, but basically why did we do that? And this is like absolute starting point. She will obviously progress to StockFish 1 by herself, StockFish level 2, etc. and then start playing into the real world. But before that, let's do a bit of a revision of what did we do and why. So we started with e4. Why?
It's a standard move, and the king and bishop can both go diagonally.
The queen and the bishop can go diagonally, and it's standard move, like you say, because then our bishop has all these squares it has access to, and our queen has all these squares that he has access to, this diagonal and this diagonal. Okay, so then our opponent went Sicilian, did okay, why does this happen? That I don't really know, but okay. So then you went knight f3. Why did you do that?
Because if in the future the pawn on d will go to d4, then the knight has something to protect.
Yeah, that's the reason, but the main reason is because you're developing your minor pieces. So there are 4 minor pieces, the 2 knights and the 2 bishops. These are called the minor pieces. There are 3 major pieces, which is the 2 rooks and the queen. The minor pieces has to be developed first, and you are developing your knight minor pieces. What does developing means? That you are going towards the enemy king. Developing means going towards the active squares. Active squares means the squares which is going towards the enemy king. And process of development is making your pieces more developed, and you develop your minor pieces first, and therefore knight f3, knight c3 was also a good move. Our opponent went with e6 with an idea to push d5 in the next move if we don't do anything. So what did you do next?
We put the knight on
c3.
Yeah.
Because you develop the minor pieces, and you develop the knights before the bishop if it's possible. So there is a second knight which is not developed yet, so you developed the knight. And then we are running towards this enemy king which is located here. So as you can see, we are marching towards the king to try to basically checkmate him. Basically, he develops his knight, he attacks our pawn. Our pawn is already protected with our knight. So what do we do next? What is the next piece that we need to develop?
Our bishop.
Yeah, and the dark colored bishop cannot be developed yet, so we have to develop our light colored bishop. Where can we develop it to?
c4.
Yeah, c4 is a good square. Actually, b5 is also a good square. It goes into something called Raya Lopez kind of lines, but c4 is good because it controls this long diagonal. So indeed, you did bishop c4. Our opponent pushed the d pawn, which is a little bit silly move. His own bishop is being blockaded. What is the next piece you need to develop?
The other
Bishop. So in order to develop that, you have to get this d pawn out of the way. So you can go d4 or you can go d3. You chose
d3
because it's more solid. d4 is directly breaking open the center. Before doing the pawn break, you first want to develop all the pieces, and once they are developed, then you will break open the center, and therefore you do d3 instead. Our opponent did a very slow move h6, which basically is not doing much while it is protecting the bishop from going there, but it's very, very passive move. What do we do next?
We are going to move the bishop.
Yeah, you have to develop your bishop. Where can you develop it?
To e4.
E3.
Oh,
So we develop it to e3. F4 is also possible, but then he pushes the pawn, so e3 is just safe, right? Because you are trying to develop essentially. Our opponent did e7, which is basically a standard move in these kind of positions. It's a Sicilian system that we are playing. You don't need to know that now, but it's very common. You will see the bishop being on e7, the other bishop being on b7, and that's very common in these kind of positions. What do we do next? What do we need to develop?
Now we need to
develop
develop our queen.
queen, right? So we did queen d2, and then our opponent did a6, which is very common idea, a6, b5, and then bishop b7. That's what he's planning to do. What do we do next?
We're gonna castle.
Castle, basically that completes our development. Well, almost, because the two rooks still need to be developed. Our opponent hits a tempo on the bishop. Now what should you normally do? March forward to find an active move to attack the king. But in this case, there are no forward squares available. So you are forced to retreat. You should retreat only when forced. When given option, you should always move forward. Right? That's called active move, and activity is how you checkmate the king, because activity is our forces moving towards the enemy king, and given an option, you should always prefer the moves, which is moving forward. Okay, he castles. What are we going to develop next?
We're gonna develop our rook.
Yeah, which rook? A rook or the
A
F rook? A rook. Where would you put that? E1 or F1? Those are two
E1.
good square.
E1.
E1, because the other rook can then go, because if you had put the rook on the on here, then the other rook cannot have developed, and therefore instead you develop the rook to E1. So that is good. And then once that happens, he get a tempo on our knight. Now where should your pieces go if possible? Forward or backward?
Forward.
So which is the forward square it can go towards?
The knight can go to
A4. A4.
Oh, A4.
Because it's fourth, right?
Yeah.
So it's A4. It goes to A4 because it's moving forward. If given an option, you have to go to the forward square. Then he goes bishop b7, which is very, very common idea here. And then what are you going to do next? Now all your development is complete. So what do you need to do once your development is complete? Pawn break.
Yeah.
You have to do a pawn break. So how do you break open the center? So this is the center, the E file and the D file. That's the
Pushing
center.
your pawn.
Yes. So you push your D pawn. He gets a intermezzo. Instead of capturing our pawn, he captures our hanging pawn to gain a tempo on our queen. Where should the queen move? Forward or backward?
Forward.
Forward. When given an option, you always move forward. So the queen moves to a more active square, because then it's controlling this diagonal towards the king. So if possible, you control forward. Then he pushes his A pawn, and what are we going to do next? All our development is complete. Therefore, we have to break the center. So how can we break the center? By pawn takes. Because that means once we do that, then basically you are breaking open the center. And as you can see, our pieces are now aligned to attack the center. And when you destroy the pieces from the center, then you can attack the king. And therefore, you have to attack the center. So we are attacking the center by taking this. He takes with knight. How should we take it? There are three ways to capture it. Knight can take, bishop can take. There are two ways to capture, or your queen can run somewhere, right? So what should we take with?
We should take with bishop.
No, with knight, because your knight is in the center.
Oh.
In the side, and knight on a side is a very dull piece. It's not moving towards the king, so you have to move this knight towards the king, and therefore you have to move towards and also knight is a slow moving piece. The bishop is a long moving piece, and bishop is already on this diagonal, so therefore you will capture with knight. Instead of capturing our knight, he captures our other knight, which is called as an intermezzo. He tries to do this intermezzo. What do we do? So the first move that you will come to your mind is either taking the bishop. That's the first move, but there is another move which we can do. Our knight is under attack. What can we do?
Protect our knight.
Protect the knight is an option, but where can we protect? How can we protect the knight? We can go to this E4 square like so, but then he will simply take our rook. So that's not good.
A rook. Oh yeah.
because our rook is also hanging. When he attacked this piece by doing this intermezzo, our rook is under attack. So by knight, so we have two options, either to take the bishop or do something with the knight. So what do? We can sacrifice.
Yeah.
We can sacrifice for activity by moving forward towards the king with an idea that if he takes, we come with a check and then he must move. So suppose we take, suppose he take, suppose we do check, he has to move to the side, and then we can form a checkmating pattern by first capturing this pawn, bringing our rook into the game, and then trying to checkmate him here. That would be our idea to get the initiative, and that's why. And secondly, our knight was under attack anyway, so it's dead. We can either take the knight or we can take the bishop. So that's the reason you found knight takes sacrifice essentially, right? So then let's come to that position. So this all happened. You did sacrifice with the knight, and he doesn't take the pawn because he knows that if you take with the pawn, you come with a tempo. So instead of doing that, he does this silly move. He should have simply taken our rook. What do we do? Now what is being attacked?
The king.
The queen is being
the
attacked.
queen, yeah.
So what do?
We take.
Yeah, we simply capture attacking piece. Then he does queen takes. What is this queen up doing? What it is doing is, it's now when he pawn takes, we cannot take with bishop anymore because the queen will be controlling this square. So now our knight needs to get away from here. So where can the knight go? Ideally forward, but there are no forward square. Well, there is this rook. We could have taken the rook and win the game, but we maintain the tension by doing what? We have to checkmate the king. So should it go towards this side or towards right hand side or left hand side?
Left hand side.
Right hand side.
Oh, okay.
Right hand side, because the king is on the right hand side. So you go towards the right hand side instead of taking the rook, because we are trying to checkmate the king, and we don't really gain a lot by taking the rook because we want to keep the tension and want to checkmate him. And our checkmating idea is, once our knight moves here, our queen can go here, because then that battery will form which can checkmate the king. That is our idea. So then he moves the rook, he makes the life easier for us. So now what do? We form that checkmating pattern by forming the battery with the queen and the bishop, because now if he's not doing much, suppose he does some silly move, like say he moves his knight in the next move, suppose, what can we do? If he moves his knight, then the queen can take the pawn, and that will be pretty bad for him. So you form this battery with the queen and the bishop. He attacks our knight. What can we do? Now our knight is under attack. Do we want to trade pieces? No. When you are under attack, when you are attacking, you don't trade pieces, because that will have less pieces to attack. So you just bring the knight to the other square to threaten the fork. If he is not careful, you can then fork on this square essentially, right? So yeah, so you move your knight here. He develops the knight, but then what you are able to do? You are able to get the fork by moving the knight to b6, because knight b6 is forking, it's attacking the queen and the rook at the same time. And that is why you came there. So you fork them. It's a very common tactic. When a piece attacks two enemy pieces at the same time which are of higher value, then he can only save one of them. And that fork, therefore, is an important tactical concept that you need to know. Tactic is short-term things, that is winning material. So we fork, he attacks our queen. What should we take the pawn with? If we don't take it, then we will lose our queen, right? So what can we take the pawn with?
With the knight.
No. The knight takes is not coming with a tempo on the
rook.
queen. With the rook. Because when you take with the rook, you are coming with a tempo on the queen. And the queen must move, and you gain a tempo. So the queen takes rook. What should we take the queen with?
Knight.
knight, because knight is of lower value. So you take, and you are now ahead in the game. And now we have to checkmate the king. So he wins the rook here. What can we do again? What is the tactical concept that I told you earlier? Fork. When you attack two pieces at the same time, is there a way to attack the two rooks? Yes.
Yeah.
So we put the knight to b6 back again to fork those two rooks. He moved his knight to attack our queen, but the queen also has a discovery. When the knight moved, then now our queen is also being attacked by the rook. So the queen must move. Where should the queen move?
It should move here.
Where?
Above.
No, because this file is being controlled by the rook, so you cannot go on this file.
Oh,
If you move here, then he will just take with the rook.
yeah.
So where do you go? You cannot be on this C file, anywhere on C file. So what are the other options?
Oh, you go to the center.
Yes, you go to the center, because those four squares, d4, d5, e4, e5 was important squares for queen. When the queen was on those squares, it controls a lot of squares, and therefore you move the queen to that square, because this is a central square, and if possible you should try to occupy. And you are also now, and now you have to distract this knight somehow, because if this knight is distracted, then this pawn can be taken. Currently you can't take the pawn, the f pawn, because the knight is controlling it. You will lose your queen, so you have to distract it. So he does something silly, which he does. Then how are you going to distract the knight? So the immediate option is to take the immediate thing will be to take the I mean, that's possible. You can also, the fork is working, right? So you could distract the knight, or first you could take the rook down. Let's take the rook down, otherwise he can get some counter play, right? So should you take the rook, or should you protect your bishop? Because your bishop is also under attack. Which is of higher value?
Taking the rook.
Yes. So you take the rook. He does some silly move, and now we need to distract this knight, like we discussed. So how do we distract the knight?
By putting your
Pawn. And that is also fork, because it's attacking the knight and the bishop at the same time. But you will not take actually the bishop. You'll take the knight, because your objective is to remove the defender of the f7 pawn. So in the next move, he took our knight. We took his knight to our plan. And now he checks, we just shift. This is all forced. And now when he comes here, then our main idea comes. We are able to check him. And now he moves here, which is a mistake. Why is it a mistake? Because we can fork him from here.
Yeah.
Again, fork, because it hits the king and the rook at the same time. And when the king moves, we basically take the rook. So now his rook is gone. His last piece is left, basically, which is his bishop. So we have to take down the bishop. So what do you attack the bishop with? There are many ways, but you can simply attack with the pawn, right? And then he took your bishop. You took his bishop. He goes here, and now you have to checkmate him. So you have to cover in order to push the king to the back rank. This is called back rank, the last rank, the 8th rank. So you have to push the king to the back rank to protect him, but he can run from this g6 square. So you cover it with your rook, so that the king cannot run. And once he does any move, you check him, and then he's in the back rank. So you simply have to deliver a checkmate with your rook. You cannot deliver from the f here, because then he will simply take. So instead, you first move your rook to the as far as possible, and which is also protecting this queening square if he takes. And then it doesn't matter what you do, you checkmate him. And that is it. Next game you are going to play on your own. Okay, see you, bye.